My name is Angela Richart with the Viewpoint, and today I'm here with Jerry Wemhoff. And as you've noticed, we have microphones today, and the reason for that is because this is for a podcast. And the first thing I have to ask you is, what exactly is podcasting?
It's a great question. A lot of people aren't familiar, surprisingly. Podcasting is basically, it's online radio. Sometimes you'll stream live, record live. For a lot of people, like people at Smodcast, they'll record and then they'll put it up later. Usually you're going to use like an RSS feed and throw it up on iTunes. A lot of them are going to be using SoundCloud. These are all just sites where you're going to be able to find each podcast episode. Usually they're weekly, monthly, or daily, depending on the kind of show it is. And they just cover, usually they're specified, they cover a range of topics. So for instance, you'll find movie podcasts or news podcasts, political podcasts, things like that.
And why do you like podcasting?
I like listening to them, for one thing, and that's kind of what got me into recording them is I was a big fan of Kevin Smith's podcasts, and he's a huge proponent of getting into media, and he says that like basically if you have no talents at all, you can still podcast. You don't have to have any talent whatsoever. Everything that you need to do to podcast is it's all easy to learn, with the exception of, I don't know, some advanced audio skills, but just a basic podcast is not hard to do on your own, and it's a great outlet, really. It's a great way to be able to say things without being censored and have that conversation with millions of people that you can't have with one person sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of like my meditation, really.
Now with the live kind of thing, kind of almost like an online or a live radio broadcast, is it hard to, if you like stumble over your words or anything like that, is it hard to do like live radio?
No, because I don't do mine live, but I still, with all of my podcasts, I don't cut anything. I edit no content because to do that, you may interrupt context. And I refuse to change the context of what my guests have to say or what I have to say. So if someone stumbles with their words, or if someone says something that maybe they shouldn't have said, well, you maybe should have just thought about that before you said it. So I don't edit at all. So it doesn't become difficult in any way, no.
Now, what does podcast do that like writing and video doesn't?
They do. A lot of podcasts have video as well. They call them, some people call them vodcasts. Some people just call them video logs, video blogs. With writing, I don't know a whole lot of publications that will let you say whatever you want. In terms of podcasting versus blogging, I find that sometimes some people's talents lie better in speaking than they do in writing. So I found most people are more willing to say something that sounds stupid than write something that looks stupid, because you have the chance to look at it and say, oh, that looks like I can't spell, or it looks like I can't frame a sentence, whatever. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have a bit of an advantage there, as you don't have to be a good writer in any way.
And then what do you personally like to do podcasts about? I know you have your podcast called The Millenniums, right?
Millennials. Yeah. Millennials, We Want It Now. It's a podcast for instant gratification. It's a podcast about all the things that we want right now. And most of that is going to be entertainment, technology, stuff like that. Sometimes we talk about politics. I actually have different guests for different things. Like I'll have returning guests that just talk about politics, some who just talk about music. But mostly we talk movies, things like that, comic books.
And then how long are your podcasts usually? I know sometimes they can go on for hours.
Yeah, I had a nerd podcast that was 5 hours long. It was a fun episode to do. I've had some that were an hour and a half. It usually, I aim for the 2-hour mark. It's kind of the comfort zone, because I mean, a lot of people aren't going to sit down and listen to something for that long. I mean, I'll advertise if I have an episode that's going to be extra long. I say, great for teaching your children colorful language on long road trips. So that's kind of what they're for. I mean, I don't expect people to really go and listen to the long ones, but if you want to, I say go ahead, but I'm not pushing for them.
Mm-hmm. And then one of yours was picked up by a website, or was your whole podcast?
Yeah, actually, my whole podcast network has been picked up. DirtySprocket.com. They're a group out of Belle-Fourche. They started out as series writers. They were writing web series and movies, stuff like that. They're all theater-oriented people. So they started out with that, and now they're kind of expanding out. They want to do podcasting. So they picked mine up, and I really couldn't have asked to be part of a better group of people. I mean, they're just like the definition of the nice South Dakota citizen. You know, they're just so polite, and I can go and message them and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this for a Sunday podcast or whatever, and their response is always, awesome, go ahead, do it, you know, and never like, I don't know. They're always saying, go ahead and do it. If it doesn't work, we can always just axe it later. So.
Now, what kind of audience are you kind of aiming your podcast towards?
The 18 to 30 kind of age range, maybe a little bit older as well, depending on the subject matter. The political podcasts I encourage everyone to listen to. It's important to be informed and know what's going on. We usually talk a lot about Nebraska politics so that people are up to date on what current bills are in the legislature, or who's running for Senate, things like that. And I think it's important for anyone to listen to those even if you're not old enough to vote. So I don't know. I might one of these days do a podcast that's just for old movies, just to give the older crowd a little something. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yeah, mostly 18 to 30.
Tell me about your experience here as a student in the audio program. How did that kind of help shape your podcasting?
I was an audio student probably 4 or 5 years back, and the program's changed a bit from then. But one thing that I know, I guarantee you're going to get out of Miller or Beardsley is buy a lot of microphones. So as someone who was thinking about doing a podcast, I just happened to have, I had this device here, which I have built-in microphones. So I was like, why can't I do it? And I guess it gives you the experience that you need to be able to handle the technical aspects that most people would be afraid of if they wanted to start podcasting. So, I mean, editing, you're going to have to do some editing. You need to be able to format. You need to upload. There's so many things that you have to be able to do that can easily be learned. You can go online and you can find a few step-by-step guides, but understanding how sound works, especially, and exactly what you're going to get with different microphones, having that kind of a head start really does help a lot.
All right, well, thank you, Jerry. For The Viewpoint, I'm Angela Richart.